There was a village in central Vietnam where time had slowed and then stopped. Once, its temple was the pride of the region. Red lacquered beams, dragon columns that twisted like smoke, and a bell that echoed for miles every New Year's Eve. But years passed. The old monk died. The youth moved to cities, and the temple crumbled. Moss overtook the tiles. The dragon columns cracked. The bell rang no more. People passed it daily, barely glancing. "It's just an old ruin," they'd say. "Let it fall." But one rainy afternoon, a man arrived, wearing a conical hat, faded green shirt, and sandals worn to the sole. He walked slowly, like someone measuring time in heartbeats. He paused at the gate, ran his fingers along the rotted wooden door, closed his eyes. Then, without asking, he began to sweep. Every day after that, he returned, bringing nothing but a bag of old tools, chisels, mallets, a whetstone wrapped in cloth. No one knew his name. No one asked. He began with the door, sanding it by hand until the original grain glowed beneath layers of decay. "Who is he?" villagers whispered. "Just a crazy old man," someone muttered. "Maybe a ghost," another joked. But one child watched. Every day after school, the boy sat by the temple wall, legs crossed, eyes wide. He saw something others didn't, the way the man's hands moved like he was remembering something, not carving it. And slowly, something returned. Not just to the wood, but to the air. The silence felt different, like something sacred was being rebuilt. If stories like this stir something in your soul, if you believe forgotten beauty deserves another chance, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. Here, we share not just carvings, but the quiet rebellions of the heart. Because sometimes, all it takes is one pair of hands to remind an entire village that what was lost can be loved again. In the next part, we'll discover who this man was and what he was truly restoring. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. There are more forgotten temples waiting to speak again. His name was Lum, Nguyen Van Lum. 30 years ago, he was one of the finest temple carvers in Vietnam. A quiet man with golden hands. They said he could carve the breath of a dragon into wood, and you'd swear it was about to speak. He was known in Hue, in Hanoi. Even temples in Cambodia had requested his touch. But after his wife passed, something inside him stilled. He disappeared. No one saw him again. Some said he left for the mountains. Others thought he'd gone mad with grief. The truth was simpler and heavier. He went into silence. Lum stopped carving for the world and started carving only for memory. No clients, no commissions, just wood and prayer. And now, decades later, he stood in front of a crumbling village temple. Not to rebuild his name, but to restore something far older. "Why this temple?" the boy asked one afternoon. Lum smiled. "Because I carved it once, when I was your age." He walked over to a fallen beam, chipped and weathered, and tapped a tiny mark, his old signature. "That was my first job. I was 17 inches. The boy stared, eyes wide. "You built this?" "I helped," Lum said. "Now I help again." If stories like this bring you closer to something real, if you feel the weight of time and the warmth of craft in your heart, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. We share stories not just of wood, but of memory, of healing. As days passed, more villagers began to linger. A farmer left fruit at the steps. A woman swept the courtyard with him in silence. Something had shifted, not in the temple, but in the people. The temple was never dead, Lum told the boy. It just waited for someone to remember. If you're the kind of soul who believes in remembering, in listening to what old walls still whisper, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because the past doesn't just fade, it waits. And sometimes it carves its way back into us. Next, we'll watch as Lam takes his first real cut and begins the quiet battle against time itself. It was a still morning. The sun had just risen over the tiled roofs, spilling a soft golden hue across the broken courtyard of the temple. Birds landed on the eaves, as if drawn by something they too had forgotten. And in the center of it all stood Lam. He had cleared a wide space near the main pillar, swept the dust, and unfolded a faded cloth. Inside, 4 chisels, a worn wooden mallet, and a single piece of camphor wood that had survived years of neglect. He ran his fingers over its surface, feeling the lines of time, the hidden breath of the tree still locked within. The boy sat silently nearby, too afraid to speak. Then, tap. The first cut. Not rushed, not hard, but deliberate, like lighting incense before a prayer. And with that single stroke, something awakened. Dust lifted into the air like smoke. The chisel danced again, and the wood began to whisper. Every movement was memory. Every curve recalled something deeper. As the sun climbed higher, villagers paused their walks. They stood at a distance, watching, not because it was loud, but because it was sacred. "Why do you carve so slowly?" the boy asked. Lam smiled. "Because the wood has waited a long time to be heard again." And still, he worked. He didn't trace new designs. He uncovered old ones. Dragons curled from beneath the dust. Lotus petals re-emerged. Even the cracks became part of the story. If you've ever felt that beauty can rise again, even from ruin, if you believe that slowness holds true, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. This channel is more than technique. It's about the soul of Tradit. By afternoon, the beam shimmered faintly, not from polish, but from intention. Not perfection, but presence. And as the boy leaned closer, he whispered, "It's like the temple is breathing again." Lam nodded gently. "It never stopped. You just had to listen. If you're still with us, it means your heart hears that breath too." Take a moment and subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. Let's bring more stories like this back to life, together. Next time, we'll see what happens when wonder begins to spread and resistance rises to meet it. By the 3rd week, the carvings had begun to glow. Not from varnish or lacquer, but from care. From quiet hours layered upon quiet hours. From hands that moved with reverence, not ambition. The villagers couldn't ignore it anymore. Some peeked in while passing. Others lingered behind columns, pretending to look elsewhere. And then the whispers began. "He's wasting his time. It's too late for that place. Who asked him to do this anyway?" An elder muttered, "Old temples fall. That's just life. Let it go." Even the village chief raised an eyebrow. "Restoring it? For what? No one comes here anymore." But still, Lam carved. Every morning before sunrise, every evening until the stars blinked above the roofless prayer hall. He never raised his voice. He never replied. Only carved. But not everyone doubted. Children started to gather after school, sitting cross-legged like the boy, who now carried sandpaper and learned to sharpen chisels. A young mother brought tea one afternoon, setting it beside him without a word. And one rainy evening, something happened. Lightning flashed in the sky, and the newly carved dragon beam lit up, casting dancing shadows along the crumbling wall. An old woman gasped, "I remember that dragon. My grandfather used to pray beneath it. Tears welled up. That night, no one mocked him. If you've ever been told it's too late, that what's broken should stay broken, let this story remind you otherwise. Please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because healing takes time, and beauty needs witnesses. And maybe, just maybe, the world isn't moved by loud change, but by silent devotion. As the days passed, the air around the temple changed. You could feel it. Birds sang louder, the wind lingered, even the moss grew softer. "Do you think people will come here again?" the boy asked. Lam looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his brow. "They already are," he said, nodding toward the gate. A small crowd had gathered, not to worship, not to judge, but simply to watch, to remember, to believe again. If you're one of those people, the ones who still believe in things quietly worth saving, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. There's more than wood being carved here. There's wonder being restored. Next, we'll follow Lam as he teaches his first student and passes on more than just a craft. The boy's name was Dewey, 10 years old. Curious, quiet, but something about wood and silence called to him. Every afternoon when school ended, he ran straight to the temple. No video games, no soccer, just the sound of carving and the scent of old timber. At first, he only watched. But one day, Lam placed a small block of jackfruit wood in front of him. Next to it, a chisel. Nothing was said. Dewey hesitated, then reached out awkwardly and made his first cut. Too deep, too fast. The chisel stuck. He looked up, embarrassed. Lam didn't scold him. Instead, he placed his hand gently over the boy's and guided him. Slow, steady, respectful. "You don't force the wood," he said softly. "You invite it." That was the first lesson. The second came days later. "Always listen before you carve," Lam told him. "Wood speaks. It tells you where it wants to go." Dewey tilted his head. "But it's just a block." Lam smiled. "So are we, until someone listened." Day by day, line by line, the boy learned. Not just technique, but presence. Not just carving, but patience. He learned to sharpen in silence, to sweep without being asked, to feel the curve before drawing it. And most of all, he learned to respect time. If you believe that real art isn't rushed, that wisdom is passed hand to hand, not through tutorial, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because what you're watching is not just skill, it's legacy being carved in real time. Sometimes other children came to peek. Some tried, then gave up. But Dewey stayed, even when it rained, even when he failed. One evening, after hours of sanding, he showed Lam a small lotus he had carved. It was rough, uneven, but honest. Lam ran his fingers along it, nodding slowly. "This is yours. Keep it." "Even if it's not good?" the boy asked. "It's yours," Lam said. "That makes it sacred." That night, Dewey went home holding the carving like a treasure. And in the quiet of his room, he whispered, "I'm going to finish the temple one day." If that promise touched you too, if you believe in the power of teaching without words, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. There are more stories like this waiting to be carved. In the next part, the temple begins to speak louder, not through words, but through light, rain, and memory. Rain came softly that week. Not the heavy kind that washes things away, but the quiet kind. The kind that cleans gently. The kind that feels like memory coming home. The new carvings gleamed under the drizzle, dragons reborn, lotus flowers blooming again across beams once splintered and forgotten. Birds no longer just visited. They nested. Old men began sitting under the eaves with cups of tea. Young couples came to take wedding photos beside the wooden columns, smiling shyly beneath dragons that once slept in dust. And the bell? Someone cleaned it, polished it. Then, one evening, it rang. A deep, round sound. The kind that reaches the ribs. The kind that makes you stop, close your eyes, and feel something shift inside. The whole village turned their heads. Was that? It rang. After all these years. That night, the temple was full. Not of rituals, not of chants, but of presence. Feet on wood, hands over carvings, eyes full of stories. Duai stood beside Lam, holding the small lotus carving in his pocket. Lam didn't speak, but his eyes shimmered in the golden lamplight. "You didn't just fix the temple," someone whispered. "You gave it breath again." If you've ever felt the soul of a place return, if you've witnessed stillness come alive again, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. This is more than woodworking. It's resurrection. It's proof that with enough patience, enough love, even silence can sing again. A child ran through the prayer hall, arms stretched like wings. The boy's laugh echoed through the rafters, climbing all the way to the unfinished ceiling. Dewey turned to Lum. "Will you carve the bell tower next?" The old man smiled. "You will." Dewey blinked. "Me?" "Yes," Lum nodded. "With your hand, with my guidance." And just like that, the chisel was passed. If your heart believes in passing the flame, not hoarding it, in teaching by doing, not just saying, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because every masterpiece begins with a student, and every legacy lives on through shared hands. Next time, we'll witness how a single promise, whispered in sawdust and silence, shapes a future no one expected. The morning Dewey began carving the bell tower was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no breeze, just the creak of the old ladder as he climbed to the platform alone. Below him, the village went about its day. But up here, time stood still. In his pocket, he carried the same lotus carving Lam had once blessed. His lucky talisman. His first imperfect offering. Now, it was Dewey's turn to make something lasting. He stared at the blank beam in front of him, freshly sanded, bare as a scroll, and his hands trembled. What if he ruined it? What if his cuts were crooked? What if people laughed? He could still go back down. But then he heard it. Soft, steady footsteps. Lam stood at the base, arms crossed, watching. Not with doubt, but with quiet faith. No words, just a nod. And so, Dewey lifted the chisel, took a breath, and began. The first cut was shallow, the second, cleaner. Within minutes, sawdust danced in the sunlight, golden and alive. "You see that?" an old woman whispered below. "He carves like the old master." But Dewey didn't hear them. He was somewhere else now, in the wood, in the curve, in the story he was writing without ink. Each stroke was a promise to the temple, to his mentor, and to the little boy he used to be, who once believed that beauty could be built by hand. If this moment moved something inside you, if you believe that tradition isn't just learned, but lived, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because the future of heritage depends on those who dare to carve. Hours passed. The bell tower began to bloom. Soft lines, bold edges, tiny motifs of rice, wind, and stars. Each design had meaning, each moment intention, and somewhere beneath all of it was a silent voice whispering, "You're not alone." That night, as Dewey descended the ladder, his hands blistered and dusty, Lam met him with a warm towel and a bowl of soup. No praise, no critique, just presence. "You kept your promise," Lam said softly. Dewey nodded. "Tomorrow, we carve again." If you're still with us now, if you feel the weight and wonder of that promise, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist, because this isn't the end. It's just the passing of the torch. In the final chapter, the story returns full circle, as Dewey finishes what began decades ago. The bell tower stood tall, not grand, not flawless, but full of breath. Every cut made with heart, not haste. On the final day, Dewey arrived before dawn. He unpacked his tools like always, sharpened the chisel, lit the old oil lamp, and looked at the last uncarved space, a small panel above the arch. He had saved it for something special. A single phoenix, wings stretched wide, feathers curling like wind-blown prayers. He didn't sketch it, didn't plan it. He let his hands remember, let his breath guide. As the sun climbed higher, villagers gathered quietly below. No ceremony, no drums, just presence, just reverence. And when the final stroke was done, Dewey leaned back, wiping the sweat from his brow. It was finished. Not just the tower, but the promise, the story, the silence. He climbed down the ladder, feet trembling slightly from fatigue. Lom wasn't there. The old man had come early, left tea beside the platform, and vanished. No goodbye, no speech, just trust. If this story touched your spirit, if it made you feel like pausing, breathing, remembering, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. Here, we carve not just wood, but memory. Not just tradition, but soul. That evening, as lanterns lit up around the temple, a small breeze danced through the bell tower. The phoenix shimmered in the glow, not flashy, but alive. Children played beneath it. Old folks rested against its pillars. And Dewey sat quietly on the steps, the lotus carving still in his pocket. He traced it with his thumb, remembering every lesson, every cut, every silence. And then he whispered, "Now it's my turn to teach." Because that's what true art does. It continues. If you believe that stories like this deserve a place in today's world, if you want to see more beauty reborn by hand, please subscribe to Woodcarving Artist. There are more temples waiting, more voices hidden in wood, more dreams etched in silence, and perhaps your hands are next. Thank you for walking with us. This is just the beginning.